The envelope arrived between meetings. Plain paper, no logo, no return address. He opened it without thinking. Halfway through the first sentence, his grip tightened. The page trembled. Not from fear, from recognition. The letter did not speak about business. It did not mention money or reputation. It named him as something else, a father. In that moment, every plan he built stopped moving. The engagement ring in his pocket felt heavier. The future he announced to the world felt borrowed. You think success prepares you for everything. It does not. Sometimes, the one truth you avoid finds you anyway. Not in public, not on a stage, in silence. The letter spoke of a child, a real one, a life growing far from press releases and polished speeches. No accusations followed, no demands appeared, only a simple fact. His name sat on the page, not as a leader, not as a fiancé, as a father who never showed up. If you have ever built a life so clean and complete that it left no room for truth, this moment will feel familiar, because the hardest truths do not arrive loudly. They arrive when you think you are safe. Success teaches you how to build. It rarely teaches you how to face yourself. You learn how to win rooms. You learn how to manage perception. You learn how to keep life clean, polished, and impressive. But success also teaches you how to avoid quiet truths. You convince yourself later is safer. You convince yourself some answers can wait. You convince yourself control means peace. You tell yourself you will deal with real things once the timing feels right. But timing never asks permission. Have you ever built a life so perfect on the surface that there was no space left for honesty underneath? Have you ever chased stability so hard that you postponed who you were becoming? Most people do. You measure progress in numbers. You measure worth in applause. You measure safety in plans that never change. Yet one unanswered truth can outweigh every achievement you stack on top of it. The problem is not success. The problem is what success allows you to hide from. And when truth finally shows up, it does not ask whether you are ready. It asks whether you are willing, because at some point, you either face what you avoided, or you let it define you without your consent. And for the man holding that letter, the choice had arrived. Here is the conflict you cannot ignore. A man stands engaged to one woman, his future already scheduled, his life already announced. And yet, a child exists outside that plan. Not a rumor, not a threat. A real child whose life moves forward whether the man is ready or not. One choice protects appearances. The other demands responsibility. One path keeps applause intact. The other rewrites everything he promised. This is not about romance alone. This is about timing, truth, and consequence. If he speaks, lives will shift. If he stays silent, someone pays for it. The engagement depends on silence. The child depends on presence. Reputation pulls one way. Conscience pulls another. And here is the part most people avoid admitting. You do not lose your life by making the wrong choice. You lose your life by delaying the right one. Every step forward now carries weight. Every pause costs something. There is no version where nothing changes. There is only a version where he chooses who matters more. The question is not whether this truth will shape his future. The question is whether he will shape it himself or let it shape him. What happens next is not loud. It is not rushed. And it is not clean, because choosing truth costs more than people expect. The man holding that letter will face questions he avoided for years. He will learn how fast plans collapse when honesty enters the room. He will discover that legacy has nothing to do with wealth alone. This story is not about perfection. It is about responsibility. It is about love tested by timing. It is about what you do when life asks more than you plan to give. Before we go further, welcome. If this is your first time here, this is Lord of Hearts, a place for stories that stay with you. Stories about love, choice, and the lessons we carry forward. If you value stories that speak to real life, take a second and subscribe. It helps this channel grow. It tells the platform this kind of storytelling matters. Stay with this story until the end, because the real question is not whether he has an heir. The real question is this: when everything he built stands on one decision, will he protect the life he announced or the life he helped create? That answer changes everything. Hilarion Cross did not inherit safety. Nothing waited for him. No fallback. No family name that opened doors. He built his life from a rented warehouse with cracked floors and borrowed time. He worked mornings loading crates and nights learning systems he could barely afford to fail at. When others rested, he calculated. When others complained, he adjusted. Emotion never paid the bills. Discipline did. He learned early that hesitation cost money. Trust slowed progress. Attachment distracted focus. So he trained himself to move forward without pausing long enough to feel anything deeply. Every win reinforced the lesson. When deals collapsed, he did not panic. When people walked away, he did not chase. When nights stretched long, he stayed alert. Distance became a shield. It protected him from disappointment. It protected him from reliance. It protected him from needing anyone. As his business expanded, so did the space between him and everyone else. Offices grew larger, walls grew thicker, conversations grew shorter. He kept people close enough to work, far enough to control. Control felt like peace. If he could manage outcomes, nothing could shake him. If he could predict tomorrow, today stayed calm. So he built systems, schedules, and expectations that left no room for uncertainty. And it worked. From the outside, his life looked complete, stable, impressive, but inside, something stayed untouched, not broken, just unused. He did not miss what he never allowed himself to need, or so he believed. As Hilarion's influence expanded, his world narrowed, not in size, in access. He learned which conversations mattered and which ones slowed momentum. He kept meetings precise, relationships efficient, emotions contained. Every part of his life followed structure. Distance did more than protect his focus. It protected his confidence. If people stayed at a measured length, they could not disappoint him. If expectations stayed limited, outcomes stayed predictable. He convinced himself this was maturity, not avoidance. Control became his quiet rule. He chose when to listen. He chose when to respond. He chose when to leave. Nothing caught him off guard. Nothing surprised him long enough to hurt. When problems appeared, he solved them quickly. When feelings surfaced, he redirected attention. He treated discomfort like a delay, not a message. The farther he climbed, the more this approach rewarded him. Partners respected his clarity. Investors admired his steadiness. Teams followed his certainty. But peace built on control carries a cost. It requires constant maintenance, constant distance, constant restraint. There were moments he noticed the silence. Late evenings in wide rooms, long drives with no calls waiting, celebrations that ended early because no one truly knew him well enough to stay. He dismissed those moments as the price of progress. This was the life he chose. This was the life that worked, or so he told himself. Because when control replaces connection, peace feels real until something arrives that cannot be managed. And Hilarion had structured his life carefully to ensure nothing ever did. When Hilarion chose to get engaged, it did not begin with emotion. It began with alignment. Caldria Moore fit the life he built. She understood schedules. She respected boundaries. She knew how to stand beside power without demanding access to it. In public spaces, she carried herself with calm assurance. In private, she never pressed for more than he offered. That mattered. With Caldria, expectations stayed clear. Their conversations stayed smooth. Their future stayed predictable. She supported his work without competing with it. She matched his pace without challenging his distance. The relationship made sense. Dinners followed plans. Events followed calendars. Affection followed timing. There were no surprises, no pressure to explain silences, no questions about what stayed unspoken. Together, they formed an image of stability that others trusted. To Hilarion, that felt like success applied to partnership. Love, as he understood it, did not need intensity. It needed function. It needed reliability. It needed to hold shape under scrutiny. And Caldria did. The ring symbolized completion. A final piece placed carefully into a life already arranged. It reassured investors. It reassured family. It reassured him. This was the future he could manage. Yet, beneath the structure, something remained absent. There were no shared risks, no vulnerable moments, no space where defenses lowered. He did not notice the absence because nothing demanded attention. When connection is replaced by coordination, emptiness hides well. The engagement promised continuity. It promised order. It promised peace. But it never promised closeness. And Ilarion had convinced himself he did not need that. From the outside, Ilarion's life looked finished. Glass walls opened to city views. Floors stayed spotless. Art hung where meaning felt implied rather than explained. Everything had space. Everything had order. Nothing felt out of place. Yet the rooms echoed. Mornings began in silence. Evenings ended the same way. His calendar stayed full, but his phone rarely rang without purpose. Conversations revolved around outcomes, not feelings. Celebrations ended early because there was no one he wanted to linger with once the point had been made. Luxury filled the gaps where connection should have lived. Cars waited downstairs. Flights stood ready. Doors opened without questions, but none of it followed him into quiet moments. When the day slowed, there was no voice asking how he felt, no presence reminding him why any of it mattered beyond momentum. He told himself this was freedom. He told himself solitude was the reward for independence. Yet independence without attachment grows hollow. The success he built looked complete because nothing challenged it. Nothing tested its depth. Nothing demanded more than structure. That illusion held until the letter arrived. Because wealth answers many problems. It does not answer absence. It can impress others. It cannot replace presence. And for the first time, Ilarion sensed the truth beneath everything he owned. His life was strong. His systems worked. His achievements stood tall. But connection had never been part of the design. And success without connection only feels whole until something real asks to belong inside it. This is the lesson hiding inside Ilarion's life. Success can look complete long before it gets tested. When things move smoothly, it is easy to believe you have built something solid. When results keep coming, you assume the foundation holds. But progress without connection only proves one thing. It has never been challenged by something that matters. Achievement fills space. Connection fills meaning. Ilarion did not fail because he worked hard. He did not fail because he wanted stability. He failed because he believed structure alone could replace closeness. Many people do. You chase growth. You protect peace. You delay difficult truths. And everything feels fine, until one honest moment asks more from you than planning ever did. That is when success shows its limits. Before we move forward, I want to hear from you. Do you believe success should come before love? Or do you think love gives success its value? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Read what others share. These conversations matter. If this story is already making you think differently, stay with it. What comes next will test everything Ilarion believed about control, timing, and responsibility. Because the life he built is about to meet the truth he avoided. The letter arrived without warning. No assistant announced it. No courier asked for a signature. It waited on his desk between contracts and schedules, resting where nothing personal ever landed. Ilarion almost dismissed it. He nearly slid it aside for later. He did not. The paper felt lighter than it should have. The handwriting stood careful, deliberate, as if every stroke carried weight. He opened it standing up, expecting a delay, a complaint, a forgotten obligation. The first line stopped him. His breath shortened. His fingers tightened. The room seemed to narrow. By the second sentence, his chest felt tight in a way no failed deal ever caused. He read slower, not because the words were unclear, but because they carried meaning he could not rush past. The letter did not accuse. It did not ask. It informed. You are a father. The words sat plainly on the page. No emphasis. No explanation yet. Just truth, delivered without force. Alarion lowered himself into the chair behind his desk. He had faced pressure before. Deadlines, losses, public scrutiny. None of it prepared him for the quiet weight pressing against his ribs. His engagement ring lay nearby, waiting for a future already mapped. The letter existed outside that plan, untouched by his timelines. He read the line again. A father. His pulse moved faster. Not from fear of exposure, but from the sudden understanding that something real had been moving forward without him. For the first time in years, his body reacted before his mind could organize a response. The past had arrived, not as memory, as responsibility. The letter did not stay abstract for long. It gave a name, Elion Ray, 7 years old. Not a concept, not a possibility, a person. The letter described him simply: quiet, curious, observant, a child who asked thoughtful questions and listened closely to answers. A child who liked the ocean and wooden puzzles. A child who noticed details others skipped. Alarion read that section twice. Names carry weight when they belong to real lives. Seeing Elion's name fixed the truth in place. This was no longer about a decision made years ago. This was about someone living in the present. The letter explained where Elion lived, a small coastal town, far from glass buildings and long meetings, far from headlines and schedules. His life moved at a pace Alarion no longer recognized. A photograph fell from the folded pages. Elion stood near the water, holding something he built with his hands. His expression stayed focused, calm. The resemblance struck immediately. Same eyes, same stillness. Alarion felt it then. Not pride, not excitement, responsibility. This child did not know him, yet his features carried echoes Alarion recognized. Evidence without accusation, proof without demand. The letter did not ask for a meeting. It did not mention support. It did not threaten exposure. It simply stated a truth that refused to stay distant. A life existed, and it carried his name in more ways than one. In that moment, the future he planned felt incomplete, not wrong. Incomplete, because Elion was not a secret. He was a reality Alarion had never faced. The letter finally explained her choice. Soriel Wynn never wanted distance to feel like punishment. She wanted it to feel like protection. From the start, she understood the life Alarion was building. She saw how momentum drove him. She knew how easily a child could become noise in a world ruled by precision. So she chose quiet. Not because she lacked courage, not because she felt shame, because she valued peace. She raised Elion without bitterness. She worked as a literacy mentor, guiding children through stories and patience. She built a life measured in routines and trust. Elion grew up knowing stability, not absence. He never heard blame. He never carried resentment that did not belong to him. Soriel believed truth mattered. She also believed timing mattered. For years, Elion thrived. He asked questions. He learned quickly. He felt safe. There was no reason to disturb a life that worked. Until a routine appointment changed the balance. The doctor asked about family history. Not urgently, not dramatically, just carefully. Soriel realized then that silence had limits. Some answers could not be invented. Some truths belonged to more than one person. She did not reach out for help. She did not reach out for money. She reached out for honesty. The letter explained this plainly. Elion deserved to know where he came from. Alarion deserved the chance to decide who he would be now, not who he failed to be then. The past had stayed quiet long enough. Now the present required clarity. The letter finally explained her choice. Soriel Wynn never wanted distance to feel like punishment. She wanted it to feel like protection. From the start, she understood the life Alarion was building. She saw how momentum drove him. She knew how easily a child could become noise in a world ruled by precision. So she chose quiet. Not because she lacked courage, not because she felt shame, because she valued peace. She raised Elion without bitterness. She worked as a literacy mentor, guiding children through stories and patience. She built a life measured in routines and trust. Elion grew up knowing stability, not absence. He never heard blame. He never carried resentment that did not belong to him. Soriel believed truth mattered. She also believed timing mattered. For years, Elion thrived. He asked questions. He learned quickly. He felt safe. There was no reason to disturb a life that worked. Until a routine appointment changed the balance. The doctor asked about family history. Not urgently, not dramatically, just carefully. Soriel realized then that silence had limits. Some answers could not be invented. Some truths belonged to more than one person. She did not reach out for help. She did not reach out for money. She reached out for honesty. The letter explained this plainly. Elion deserved to know where he came from. Alarion deserved the chance to decide who he would be now, not who he failed to be then. The past had stayed quiet long enough. Now the present required clarity. Soriel Wynn never tried to be impressive. She spoke carefully, not because she lacked confidence, but because she valued accuracy. When she listened, she stayed present. When she chose something, she stayed with it. Her life reflected intention rather than urgency. She believed stability mattered more than display. While others chased attention, Soriel protected routine. She worked as a literacy mentor, guiding children through patience, not pressure. She believed growth came from safety, not force. Her days followed simple rhythms: morning walks, quiet work, evenings spent reading aloud. Security to her meant predictability you could trust. When she realized she was pregnant years earlier, she did not panic. She assessed. She asked herself what kind of environment a child needed to feel whole. Wealth never entered that answer. Presence did. She chose peace over proximity to power. That decision shaped everything. Soriel never spoke badly about the past. She did not build her identity around what could have been. She focused on what was. Her strength stayed quiet because it did not need approval to exist. She taught Elion kindness without fragility, curiosity without fear, boundaries without harshness. Her love stayed steady, not conditional. To outsiders, her life looked modest. To those who paid attention, it looked secure. Soriel did not measure success by visibility. She measured it by calm nights and honest mornings. And in doing so, she built something many people with far more resources never managed to create. A life that felt safe to grow inside. Soriel understood the difference between safety and silence. Security offered comfort. Peace offered clarity. She could have reached out years earlier. She could have asked for support, access, or explanation. But she knew how easily a child could become managed, instead of known in a life built on control. So she chose distance with intention. Elion grew up in a home where time mattered more than status. Mornings were unhurried. Questions were answered honestly. Mistakes were treated as lessons, not failures. Soriel built structure around care, not fear. She taught him how to observe before reacting, how to listen without interrupting, how to sit with uncertainty without needing immediate resolution. These values shaped him quietly. Elion learned responsibility early, not through pressure, but through example. He helped set the table. He returned books on time. He understood that actions mattered because people mattered. Soriel never painted absence as loss. She framed life as complete as it was. She avoided narratives that placed blame or expectation on a child who did not choose his circumstances. Her decision came from trust. Trust in her ability to provide stability. Trust in Elion's resilience. Trust that truth, when necessary, would arrive with purpose. Peace, to Soriel, meant choosing the long view. It meant accepting less security on paper in exchange for emotional steadiness. She believed a child needed roots more than reach. And those roots grew strong because they were planted in patience, honesty, and care. Soriel understood the difference between safety and silence. Security offered comfort. Peace offered clarity. She could have reached out years earlier. She could have asked for support, access, or explanation, but she knew how easily a child could become managed instead of known in a life built on control. So she chose distance with intention. Elion grew up in a home where time mattered more than status. Mornings were unhurried. Questions were answered honestly. Mistakes were treated as lessons, not failures. Soriel built structure around care, not fear. She taught him how to observe before reacting, how to listen without interrupting, how to sit with uncertainty without needing immediate resolution. These values shaped him quietly. Elion learned responsibility early, not through pressure, but through example. He helped set the table. He returned books on time. He understood that actions mattered because people mattered. Soriel never painted absence as loss. She framed life as complete as it was. She avoided narratives that placed blame or expectation on a child who did not choose his circumstances. Her decision came from trust. Trust in her ability to provide stability. Trust in Elion's resilience. Trust that truth, when necessary, would arrive with purpose. Peace, to Soriel, meant choosing the long view. It meant accepting less security on paper in exchange for emotional steadiness. She believed a child needed roots more than reach. And those roots grew strong because they were planted in patience, honesty, and care. Soriel's strength never asked to be noticed. She did not compete for space. She did not raise her voice to be heard. She stood firm without hardening. Her confidence came from consistency. She showed up the same way every day, calm, prepared, honest. When life shifted, she adjusted without losing herself. That steadiness became her anchor. Caldria lived differently. Caldria understood presentation. She navigated social rooms with ease. She knew how to speak when attention mattered. Her world moved on schedules, appearances, and expectation. She matched Alarion's pace because she shared his language of order. Neither woman was wrong. They simply valued different things. Caldria believed success required alignment with momentum. She supported structure. She respected ambition. Her affections stayed measured because her world rewarded control. Soriel believed life required grounding. She supported growth through patience. Her care stayed present because her world rewarded truth. One relationship functioned smoothly. The other felt real. With Caldria, Alarion stayed composed. With Soriel, he stayed human. Soriel never asked him to become more than he was. She allowed space for imperfection. She did not demand promises or timelines. Her presence offered calm, not expectation. That difference mattered. Because love that demands attention fades when attention shifts. Love that stands quietly remains when everything else falls away. Soriel's strength did not try to replace anyone. It simply existed. And in its steadiness, it revealed what Alarion never replaced. Soriel never asked Alarion to choose. That was the difference. She did not seek reassurance through pressure. She did not require constant proof. She allowed space without withdrawing care. Her love did not compete with his life. It existed alongside it. She understood timing. She respected autonomy. She trusted character over promises. Love, to her, was not a performance. It was consistency without negotiation. If someone stayed, they stayed because they wanted to. If they left, she did not chase them back into alignment. That approach shaped everything she built. With Soriel, affection did not rise and fall with attention. It stayed steady. It did not ask to be prioritized over responsibility. It asked to be honest within it. That is why it endured. Real love does not rush. It does not demand visibility. It does not fear silence. It chooses truth even when truth costs comfort. Alarion felt that difference now, not as regret, but as recognition. He saw what patience created. He saw how stability formed without control. He saw how love could exist without negotiation. This was the lesson forming beneath the surface. Love that chases attention grows tired. Love that stands quietly grows strong. Soriel never replaced anyone because she never tried to. She simply remained herself, and in doing so, she revealed what lasting connection looks like. Not loud, not urgent. Grounded. That truth mattered now more than ever. Because the choices ahead would not reward performance. They would reward presence. Hilarion arrived without announcements. No schedule followed him. No assistants waited nearby. The house stood modest, quiet, steady. Blue shutters framed the windows. A small path led to the door. He paused before knocking, not from hesitation, but from awareness. This moment could not be managed. It could only be met. Soriel opened the door. Her expression stayed calm, but her eyes searched his face, not for reassurance, but for readiness. Inside, the space felt lived in. Books lined the walls. Toys rested where they had been left, not arranged for appearance. The air carried warmth without effort. Elion sat at the table. He looked up slowly, curious rather than startled. His gaze held focus. Calm, observant. He studied Hilarion the way children study truth before reacting to it. The resemblance struck immediately. Same eyes, same stillness, same way of holding attention without force. Elion did not rush forward. He did not retreat. He waited. Hilarion felt something shift deep within him. Not pride, not fear. Recognition. This was not a reflection. This was a person. Soriel spoke gently. Elion. This is Hilarion. No titles followed. No explanation rushed in. Elion nodded. Hi. The simplicity of it carried weight. Hilarion answered just as simply. Hi. In that exchange, nothing was promised. Nothing was defined. Yet something real had begun. Not as a role. Not as an idea. As presence. They did not sit down right away. Elion returned to what he had been building on the table. Wooden pieces laid out in careful order. He adjusted one, stepped back, then adjusted another. The process mattered more than speed. Hilarion watched without speaking. He recognized the pattern. The same way he once tested ideas before committing. The same patience he applied to systems and structure. Seeing it reflected in a child unsettled him more than any resemblance in appearance ever could. Elion noticed his attention. It only works if the base is right, he said, pointing to the bottom layer. Hilarion nodded. That makes sense. Elion considered this, then continued. They moved outside later. Elion showed him the small garden Soriel kept. He explained which plants needed more water and which needed space. He spoke with certainty earned through repetition, not instruction. Hilarion listened, not to correct, not to guide, to understand. The moments stayed ordinary. No grand gestures, no explanations about who Hilarion was meant to be. They shared space. They shared time. That was enough. Elion asked simple questions. Where Hilarion lived, what he did during the day. Whether he liked the ocean. Hilarion answered plainly. He did not decorate his life. He did not adjust his tone. He matched Elion's honesty with his own. In those quiet exchanges, pride lost relevance. What mattered was presence. For the first time in years, Hilarion felt no urge to control the moment. He allowed it to unfold at its own pace, and that choice changed everything. Elion asked questions the way children do, without strategy, without caution. They came one at a time, spaced between long pauses where he thought carefully before speaking again. Why do you live far away? Do you work a lot? Do you like being busy? Each question landed gently, yet carried weight. Hilarion did not rush to explain. He did not soften the truth to make it sound better. He chose words that fit Elion's age without hiding meaning. I work because I built something, he said, and I stayed busy for a long time. Elion nodded. Do you like it? Hilarion paused. That pause mattered. I like parts of it, he answered, but some things matter more. Elion accepted that answer without pushing. He returned to his task, satisfied. The exchange held no judgment, no expectation, just honesty shared at the right level. Later, Elion asked another question. Are you staying for dinner? Hilarion looked toward Soriel. She waited, letting the answer come from him. Yes, he said. The word felt different than any agreement he had made before. No calendar adjusted, no condition followed. He simply stayed. In those moments, control loosened its grip. Hilarion did not guide the conversation. He followed it. He did not prepare outcomes. He responded in real time. That shift mattered, because children do not need perfection. They need truth delivered with care. And for the first time, Hilarion offered exactly that. That evening stayed simple. No speeches followed. No explanations unfolded. They ate together. Elion talked about school projects and books he liked. Soriel listened. Hilarion stayed present, not as a visitor, but as someone learning how to belong. Something fundamental shifted. Pride had always shaped Hilarion's choices. Pride in building alone. Pride in control. Pride in never needing help or permission. But sitting there, those instincts felt misplaced. This was not a space where pride added value. Responsibility took its place. Responsibility meant listening without fixing. Responsibility meant showing up without directing. Responsibility meant accepting that presence mattered more than outcome. Hilarion noticed how Elion watched him, not for approval, for consistency. Children measure truth through repetition, not words. Hilarion understood this immediately. If he stayed fully. If he left, it had to be honest. There was no space for performance. That realization grounded him in a way success never had. It was not heavy. It was clear. Before we continue, pause with this moment. If you believe presence matters more than wealth, take a second and like this video. It tells the platform these stories deserve space, because the next choices Hilarion makes will not be about reputation or control. They will be about showing up again and again when it counts. And once responsibility replaces pride, there is no going back to who you were before. Caldria noticed the change before Hilarion spoke about it. He still showed up. He still answered messages. But something had shifted beneath the routine. Calls grew shorter. Replies arrived later than usual. Decisions that once came quickly now carried pauses. Not hesitation, but absence. His attention stayed elsewhere, pulled by something she could not see. Caldria understood patterns. She built her life around reading them. She sensed the distance not as neglect, but as redirection. Hilarion was present in body, not in focus. The alignment they shared began to loosen, thread by thread. At first, she told herself it was pressure. Expansion phases always demanded more from him. She adjusted her expectations, as she always had. She gave space without complaint. But space behaves differently when it stretches too far. The silence between conversations lengthened. The ease they relied on felt strained. She noticed how he no longer spoke about the future with the same certainty. Plans stayed vague. Dates remained unsaid. Caldria did not panic. She did not accuse. She called. The call was calm, controlled. Her voice carried curiosity more than concern. "You've been distant," she said. "I need to understand why." Hilarion listened without interrupting. He did not reassure her with habits. He did not deflect with work. For the first time, he allowed the question to remain unanswered for a moment. That pause said more than any excuse could have. Caldria felt it. Whatever stood between them now was not temporary. It was not stress. It was truth waiting to surface. And once truth enters a relationship built on alignment, it demands clarity, whether both people are ready or not. Hilarion did not prepare a speech. When Caldria asked what had changed, he did not reach for careful phrasing. He did not soften the truth to protect timing. He chose honesty without decoration. "There's something you need to know," he said. Caldria listened without interrupting. She had always valued directness. Silence, in her world, meant respect. He told her about the letter, about the child, about learning something real had existed outside the life they planned. He did not dramatize it. He did not ask for understanding. He stated facts. A child, a responsibility, a truth he could no longer ignore. The line stayed quiet after he finished. Caldria absorbed the information carefully. She asked no immediate questions. She did not react impulsively. She processed. Finally she spoke. "And you went to see him?" "Yes," Hilarion said. Another pause followed. Truth changes the shape of a conversation. It removes space for assumptions. It forces both people to stand where they are, not where they hoped to be. Caldria exhaled slowly. "You didn't tell me before you went." "No," he said. "I needed clarity first." She understood that answer more than she liked, because clarity reshapes priorities. And once priorities shift, alignment must be re-examined. This was not about betrayal. It was about reality arriving late, and reality does not ask whether it fits into plans already made. It asks whether those plans can survive it. Caldria did not raise her voice. She did not accuse. She did not collapse. Her response stayed measured, shaped by the same composure that defined her public life. But beneath that control, something shifted. Not anger, awareness. "This changes what we planned," she said. Hilarion did not disagree. He did not defend himself. He allowed the statement to stand as truth. Caldria asked practical questions: where the child lived, how long Hilarion planned to stay involved, whether this was temporary curiosity or permanent responsibility. Each question carried weight, not suspicion. Assessment. She listened closely to his answers. When he spoke about presence, about showing up consistently, about accepting a role he never prepared for, she understood what that meant. Not for his schedule, for their future. Caldria valued clarity above comfort, and clarity in that moment pointed in a direction she had not chosen. "This isn't about competition," she said quietly. "It's about priorities." She did not frame herself as wronged. She framed the situation as misaligned. Two people standing at a crossroads, neither anticipated. She cared for Hilarion. She respected his integrity. But respect did not erase reality. "You're becoming someone different," she said, "and I can't pretend that doesn't matter." Her reaction stayed honest, not dramatic. Sometimes relationships do not end because of harm. They end because truth changes direction, and Caldria understood that better than most. They did not drag it out. There were no ultimatums, no conditions offered to delay the truth. Caldria removed the ring herself. She placed it on the table between them, not as a symbol of loss, but of conclusion. The decision felt firm, not emotional. "This isn't failure," she said. "It's honesty arriving late." Hilarion nodded. He felt the weight of public reaction before it happened. Questions would follow. Speculation would rise. Plans would need revision. He accepted all of it without resistance. Reputation pressed from every side. Investors preferred certainty. Circles preferred stability. Announcements had already been made, but inner clarity held stronger. For the first time, Hilarion did not measure the cost of truth in headlines or consequences. He measured it in alignment. He understood what delaying honesty would do. It would erode respect slowly. It would turn silence into damage. Ending things cleanly preserved dignity. They acknowledged what they shared. They respected what no longer fit. They walked away without bitterness, each carrying clarity instead of confusion. This was the lesson the moment delivered. Honesty hurts less than delay. Delay turns truth into pressure. Delay turns clarity into conflict. Delay costs more than people admit. Hilarion left that conversation lighter than he arrived, not because the choice was easy, but because it was complete. The engagement ended without chaos, but the story did not end there. Because choosing truth does not simplify life, it sharpens it. And what followed would test whether clarity could survive the weight of everything he built. Hilarion did not announce change. He made it. Meetings shifted first, not cancelled, adjusted. He stopped stacking his days so tightly that nothing unexpected could enter them. He delegated decisions he once guarded closely, not because he lost interest, but because his attention had found a new center. He began traveling differently. No rushed arrivals, no immediate departures. When he came to the coastal town, he stayed long enough to settle into its pace. Mornings started earlier, Evenings slowed. Time no longer felt like a resource to manage, but a presence to honor. Control loosened in small ways. He stopped correcting routines that worked. He stopped preparing conversations before they happened. He listened more than he spoke. He observed before deciding. This adjustment felt unfamiliar. In his old life, structure meant safety. In this one, flexibility created trust. He learned that showing up mattered more than optimizing outcomes. Schedules still existed. Responsibilities still waited. But they no longer ruled every decision. When Elion needed him, Alarion stayed. When Soriel needed clarity, he gave it without delay. Letting go did not weaken him. It steadied him. For the first time, his life held room for something unplanned without collapsing. He learned that presence did not threaten success. It refined it. This was not a transformation made overnight. It was a man learning how to stay without trying to control what staying meant. Alarion handled Elion's medical needs without drawing attention. No public gestures followed. No announcements were made. He coordinated appointments quietly, working with Soriel rather than around her. He listened to explanations from doctors without trying to lead the conversation. He asked questions only when clarity mattered, not to assert authority. Presence mattered more than solutions. He attended visits without rushing. He sat beside Elion, not across from professionals. When decisions needed time, he allowed it. When reassurance mattered, he offered calm, not certainty. Consistency followed. He showed up on days with no appointments, on afternoons that required nothing more than shared time. He learned that care extended beyond moments of concern. When Elion felt uncertain, Alarion stayed close without hovering. He understood that comfort did not come from answers alone. It came from reliability. This pattern repeated, not once, not occasionally, consistently. Each visit reinforced trust. Each quiet afternoon built familiarity. Alarion did not try to earn approval. He focused on being present enough for trust to grow on its own. Responsibility settled naturally. It no longer felt like a role he stepped into. It felt like something he belonged to. Soriel noticed the difference. Not through promises, through repetition, and repetition, when honest, builds belief faster than words ever could. Alarion learned Elion's days the way he once learned markets. Not to master them, to respect them. He learned which mornings needed quiet, which afternoons carried energy, which evenings required patience. He noticed how Elion focused best after movement, how questions came later. In the day, how stories before sleep mattered more than instructions. These routines were not written down. They were observed. Alarion adapted without forcing his own habits into the space. He followed Soriel's lead. He asked before changing anything. He accepted correction without defensiveness. Fatherhood rearranged his priorities without announcement. Calls waited. Emails paused. Decisions slowed when presence mattered more. This did not feel like a sacrifice. It felt like alignment arriving where it had always been missing. He discovered that progress looked different here. Growth showed up as patience. Success looked like consistency. Achievement meant being expected and showing up anyway. Elion began to rely on him in small ways, asking for help with a task, waiting for him before starting something new. These gestures were subtle, but they carried meaning. Alarion understood them immediately. Trust had shifted from possibility to pattern. In this space, control lost relevance. Outcomes mattered less than process. Being there mattered more than being right. He stopped thinking in terms of balance. He thought in terms of priority. And fatherhood clarified something success never had. The most important work does not announce itself. It happens quietly, every day, when you choose to stay. Soriel did not rush trust. She observed. She watched how Alarion handled the inconvenience, how he responded when plans changed, how he stayed when nothing demanded his presence. Trust, to her, grew from patterns, not intention. Over time, her posture shifted, not dramatically, gradually. Conversations grew easier. Silence felt comfortable rather than cautious. She stopped preparing for disappointment. She allowed space for possibility without expectation. Ilarion never pushed. He did not ask for forgiveness. He did not ask for clarity about what they were becoming. He respected the pace Soriel set. He focused on showing up well rather than being understood quickly. That restraint mattered. Soriel softened because safety had returned. Not emotional safety alone. Practical safety, the kind built through repetition and honesty. Moments emerged naturally. Shared meals, quiet walks, conversations that wandered without purpose. Romance returned without pressure. Not as a revival, as a continuation. There was no declaration, no promise spoken aloud. Just presence layered over time until the connection felt natural again. Soriel recognized the change not in grand gestures, but in calm evenings that no longer felt guarded. Trust did not come back because Ilarion tried to win it. It returned because he stayed consistent when it would have been easier to retreat. This was the lesson settling in. Love does not reappear through urgency. It grows where patience remains. And in learning how to stay, Ilarion discovered something deeper than success. He found belonging. The porch became neutral ground, not a place for decisions, a place for breath. Evenings settled there naturally. After Elion fell asleep, Soriel and Ilarion stepped outside without planning it. Chairs stayed close, but not touching. The ocean moved in the distance, steady and unconcerned. They talked without an agenda. Some nights they spoke about Elion, about how quickly he learned, about the way he noticed small things. Other nights the conversation drifted to work, books, or nothing specific at all. Silence never felt awkward. It rested between them without pressure. No one rushed to fill it. No one mistook it for distance. It simply existed, aloud. Ilarion noticed how different this felt from his old life. There were no outcomes to manage here, no image to maintain, no need to perform. Soriel leaned back, comfortable enough to let thoughts pass without sharing all of them. Ilarion respected that. He learned that listening did not always require a response. Trust deepened quietly. They did not revisit old choices. They did not analyze mistakes. The past remained acknowledged without being reopened. What mattered was what stayed consistent now. The porch held space for honesty without demand. It allowed the connection to return without announcement. In those moments, love did not re-enter loudly. It sat down gently and stayed. Some evenings passed without many words. They listened to the night settle. The quiet carried weight, but not tension. It felt earned. Neither of them reached for reassurance. Neither asked where things were going. That absence of pressure mattered. Ilarion did not try to define what they were rebuilding. He understood how easily words could rush something that needed time. Soriel noticed the restraint. She trusted it more than any promise. No questions followed like, "What are we now? Where is this headed?" Those questions waited because safety had returned first. Shared silence became a language of its own. A glance that lingered. A small smile without explanation. A moment where nothing needed to be fixed. Soriel allowed herself to relax into those pauses. She stopped guarding her reactions. She let warmth surface naturally, without measuring risk. Ilarion felt it too, not as certainty, as comfort. They did not revisit what might have been. They focused on what was happening now. Two people choosing presence without binding it to expectation. Love rebuilt itself there, not through declarations, not through grand moments, through patience that respected timing. When love feels safe, it does not demand proof. It does not ask to be named before it has taken shape. It grows quietly, supported by trust rather than urgency. That was what returned between them. Not a promise spoken aloud, a bond that no longer needed one. Elion anchored everything without trying to. He moved freely between them, unaware of how much balance he created. His routines stayed steady. His trust stayed simple. He expected consistency and responded to it with ease. That steadiness grounded both adults. When Elion laughed, tension dissolved. When he asked questions, honesty followed. When he slept peacefully, the house felt complete. Love rebuilt itself around that center, not as romance first, as safety first. Soriel watched how Ilarion adjusted instinctively to Elion's needs, how he paused conversations when attention mattered elsewhere, how he showed up without being asked. These moments softened her further than words ever could. Ilarion noticed it too. Love no longer felt fragile. It felt supported. It rested on shared responsibility rather than shared memory. The presence they built together held weight because it served someone beyond themselves. Elion did not connect them through obligation. He connected them through purpose. That was the difference. When safety exists, love grows naturally. It does not require validation. It does not ask for guarantees. It develops where trust has room to breathe. This was the lesson settling fully now. Love thrives where people feel secure enough to stay. It strengthens when presence replaces pressure. It endures when honesty comes before comfort. Nothing was announced. Nothing needed to be. What mattered had already taken root. The gathering was small by design. No press waited outside. No announcements followed. No speeches were prepared. It took place in a quiet space near the water, where voices carried without effort and faces felt familiar. Only people who mattered were invited, friends who stayed present, family formed through choice rather than obligation. Ilarion arrived without attention. He wore nothing meant to signal status. No one asked for updates or projections. Conversations moved easily, shaped by warmth instead of expectation. This setting felt different from every event he hosted before. There were no goals attached to the moment, no outcomes to manage, no image to protect. People spoke freely. Laughter surfaced without restraint. Time passed without anyone checking it. For the first time in years, Ilarion felt no urge to oversee the room. He did not scan for approval. He did not prepare responses. He allowed the moment to exist as it was. That choice mattered, because legacy does not grow in crowded rooms filled with applause. It forms quietly, where presence outweighs performance. This gathering reflected that truth. Nothing needed to be proven. Nothing needed to be documented. It was enough to be there. And in that simplicity, Ilarion understood something that success never taught him. What lasts rarely announces itself. Ilarion did not stand alone. Elion stayed close, his hand resting easily in Ilarion's. Not out of need, out of habit. That small connection carried more meaning than any public recognition Ilarion ever received. Soriel stood beside them, not positioned, not presented, simply present. The three of them fit together without effort. No one questioned it. No explanation followed. The truth of their bond required none. Elion spoke freely with people he trusted. He moved between conversations with comfort, knowing exactly where to return. Each time his hand found Ilarion's again, it reaffirmed something steady. This was family chosen through action, not defined by contracts, not confirmed by ceremony, built through consistency. Ilarion felt it clearly. Holding Elion's hand grounded him more than any title ever had. It reminded him why presence mattered, why responsibility shaped identity more than achievement ever could. Soriel's quiet closeness reinforced it. She did not lean on him for reassurance. She stood with him because trust had earned that space. There was no need to label what they were becoming. It already existed. This was legacy in motion, not as inheritance, as behavior. Elion watched everything. How Ilarion listened, how he responded, how he stayed when attention drifted elsewhere. And Ilarion understood then. Legacy lives in what a child learns without being told. Legacy revealed itself without ceremony. Ilarion watched Elion listen to conversations, absorb tone, notice how people treated one another. He saw how quickly children learn from what adults repeat, not what they claim. That awareness reshaped everything. Legacy was no longer about what he would leave behind. It was about what he lived in front of someone watching closely. Wealth, he realized, solves problems. It does not teach values. Power opens doors. It does not teach care. What endured was responsibility practiced daily, showing up when it was inconvenient, choosing honesty before comfort, staying present when recognition offered no reward. This understanding settled quietly. Hilarion did not need a public reset or a dramatic declaration. He needed consistency. He needed alignment between who he claimed to be and how he lived. Truth built the future he now stood in. Truth ended what no longer fit. Truth welcomed what required care. Truth allowed love to grow without pressure. Standing there, holding Elion's hand, Soriel beside him, Hilarion felt grounded in a way success never provided. This was not a reduced life. It was a refined one. Legacy did not live in accounts or headlines. It lived in moments repeated until they shaped character. That was the message made clear. Wealth means little without responsibility. Power fades without care. Truth builds futures that last. And the most meaningful legacy is not what you leave behind. It is who you choose to be every day when someone is watching and learning from your choices. It began with a letter, plain paper, careful words, a truth that refused to wait. At the start of this story, a man held that letter with shaking hands, unsure whether it would cost him the life he built. He believed success protected him. He believed control kept him safe. He believed timing belonged to him. He was wrong. The letter did not arrive to destroy him. It arrived to correct him. That moment exposed a simple truth many people avoid. You can build a flawless life and still miss what matters. You can succeed publicly while failing privately. You can plan everything and still be unprepared for honesty. Hilarion learned this the hard way. He learned that avoiding truth does not erase it. It delays it. And delayed truth carries weight. It presses harder. It demands more. When he finally chose to face what the letter revealed, his life did not fall apart. It realigned. The things that mattered stayed. The things that relied on silence fell away. That is the difference. Truth does not ruin strong foundations. It removes weak ones. Looking back now, the letter no longer felt like a threat. It felt like an invitation to choose presence over image, responsibility over comfort, meaning over appearance. The letter did not change who Hilarion was. It revealed who he needed to become. This story carries a simple lesson many people learn too late. Success does not protect you from truth. It only delays the moment you face it. Hilarion built a life designed to look complete. Structure replaced connection. Control replaced closeness. Everything worked until something real asked to belong inside it. That is where the test begins. You do not measure a life by how impressive it appears. You measure it by how it responds to responsibility. When Hilarion chose presence over pride, his life did not shrink. It gained depth. When he chose honesty over delay, pain did not multiply. Confusion ended. When he chose care over image, his future became clearer. This is what matters. Wealth without responsibility feels empty. Power without care fades quickly. Truth, when faced early, builds strength instead of pressure. Love grows where safety exists. Safety grows where honesty lives. And honesty requires courage, not perfection. Many people wait for the right moment to face truth. That moment rarely arrives on schedule. It arrives when delay costs more than action. The lesson here is not about making flawless choices. It is about making real ones. You do not become better by hiding from hard truths. You become better by meeting them fully. Hilarion's story reminds us that the most meaningful growth does not come from winning more. It comes from staying when staying matters, choosing care when care is inconvenient, and allowing truth to reshape what no longer fits. That is how lives change without falling apart. Before you go, take a moment to sit with this question. What truth have you been delaying because life looks stable on the surface? Many people wait for problems before they choose honesty. This story reminds us that waiting costs more than we admit. The strongest lives are not the ones without disruption. They are the ones willing to adjust when responsibility calls. Alarion did not become better by gaining more. He became better by showing up. He learned that real strength is quiet. It looks like consistency. It sounds like listening. It feels like staying when walking away would be easier. That is the kind of legacy worth building. If this story spoke to you, take a moment to like this video. It helps these messages reach more people who need them. If you believe love, truth, and responsibility still matter in a world obsessed with appearance, subscribe to Lord of Hearts. This channel exists for stories that leave you better than they found you. And I want to hear from you. What was the biggest lesson you took from this story? Was it about honesty, timing, love, or responsibility? Share your thoughts in the comments. Read what others write. These conversations matter more than numbers ever will. Remember this as you move forward. A life built on truth may shift, but it will never collapse. And the most meaningful choice you make is not what you achieve next. It is who you choose to be when the moment asks you to stay.